In cultural news, Snow White, there's been an enormous amount of controversy surrounding Snow White, obviously, because of everything from the original decisions with regard to casting to the insane, hardcore, nasty leftism of Rachel Zegler attacking her own co-star for being Israeli, and just and generally attacking men and suggesting that Snow White was a sexist story and all this. Controversy has been dogging this movie. A few lessons for Disney. Number one, stop cannibalizing all your old IP. Like, it's really bad. It's really bad business. Number two, please stop changing all of the historic plots, which actually have meaning to generations of people, to instead become generic woke story about how woman leads revolutionary uprising and she don't need no man. Because guess what? Nobody grew up with that crap.
It just takes a beloved movie and makes it much more boring and much less realistic. Kind of like Society on Liberalism.
Hollywood is no stranger to controversy, but this one has really set the internet on fire. Rachel Zegler, the lead actress in Disney's live-action Snow White, has been at the center of intense backlash after comments she made about the classic movie. And if that wasn't enough, conservative commentator Ben Shapiro just added fuel to the fire by calling out what he sees as Disney's relentless push for wokeness. But he's not the only one speaking out. This debate has spread across social media, with fans, critics, and even other celebrities weighing in. So what exactly did Zegler say that sparked all this outrage? And why is Shapiro going after her so hard? If you're curious about what Shapiro said, and if you also want to stay updated on all the latest Hollywood controversies, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Join as we delve into this Disney drama that has everyone talking, the controversial comments that started it all.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Everything went downhill for the live-action Snow White after Rachel Zegler, the star of the new live-action Snow White, made some bold remarks during interviews that set the internet ablaze. The controversy all began when Rachel, in an interview, addressed the portrayal of her character and the direction the movie was taking. Instead of celebrating the film's legacy, she openly criticized the original 1937 animated movie, calling it outdated and problematic. And according to Zegler, Snow White's love story with the prince was weird and not what little girls want to see anymore. She also emphasized that the new version focuses more on female empowerment and less on romance.
And the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
But fans didn't take kindly to her comments. Many felt that she was dismissing a beloved classic that has been cherished for generations. Critics argued that if she disliked the original so much, why take on the role at all? The backlash was immediate, with people accusing Zegler of being disrespectful to Disney's legacy and alienating the very audience that made Snow White a timeless favorite.
I don't think it's worth watching. Then I guess it is that bad. I wouldn't go out of my way to watch this film, unless you're really curious about how the 1937 Snow White is going to be reimagined in our 2025 hellscape. That would be the only reason I watch this.
Meanwhile, the controversy took another turn when Ben Shapiro weighed in. The conservative commentator, known for his sharp critiques of Hollywood, saw this as yet another example of modern actors rewriting history to fit a progressive agenda. But here's the most interesting part: Ben Shapiro's brutal response. Shapiro wasted no time in responding to Zegler's comments. He accused her of being out of touch with audiences, arguing that Hollywood's obsession with remaking classics while attacking their original messages was alienating fans. According to him, the problem wasn't just Zegler's comments. It was about the entire industry shifting toward pushing progressive narratives instead of focusing on storytelling.
She's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true.
He pointed out that Snow White was never meant to be a statement on feminism or outdated gender roles. It was a fairy tale meant to entertain children, and by turning it into a political message, Disney risked losing the very audience that made the original film a success.
People don't want Snow White as president. They want her to be this damsel in distress. Everyone loved the whole purpose of watching fairy tales is because they're love stories. And you can have Disney princesses who are strong.
Shapiro also highlighted the irony of an actress taking a role in a classic film while simultaneously trashing the source material. If she disliked Snow White so much, why take the role in the first place? His remarks quickly gained traction online, with many people agreeing that Hollywood has lost touch with its audience. However, this was only the beginning, as Shapiro went on to challenge another aspect of the movie's production, one that sparked more controversy: the racially specific problem.
Rachel Zegler, who is playing Snow Diversity, because we can't do Snow White anymore, because obviously that'd be racist. Right? Tiana must remain a black princess forever, but Snow White cannot be a white princess, even if her literal name is Snow White, because she has skin as white as snow.
Shapiro had an issue not only with the movie, but also with the casting of the film. He stated that Snow White, as a character, is racially specific. According to Shapiro, the name Snow White itself points to her whiteness. On his radio show, he said, "Her name is Snow White." Now, you may consider that racist, but that's also the name of the actual fairy tale. He went on to argue that in the original 1937 Disney film, Snow White was depicted as having skin as white as snow, which to him made it clear that the character should be portrayed by a white actress.
Maybe you should cast people as like what the description of the part is. There are certain parts where the person is described as white, and that's okay. That's not like the end of the world. So you have to be racially blind when it comes to a person who is cast for white physical descriptors.
Shapiro's views on diversity and casting.
The new Snow White is going to be an abomination. How do we know it's going to be an abomination? Well, first we had those pictures that showed that Snow White's 7 dwarves are actually 6 large people, like normal-sized people, and 1 little person. But now we actually have some verbiage from the lady who is Rachel Zegler, who is playing Snow White. Again, it's kind of weird because the left is very big on the distinction between white and brown. Right? They're very big on this, racially speaking.
Furthermore, Shapiro's argument about racial specificity didn't stop at Snow White. He compared the situation to casting Alexander Hamilton in Hamilton, the Broadway musical, where a black actor portrays the historical figure. According to Shapiro, this is acceptable, but casting someone like Martin Luther King Jr. as a white person would be totally unacceptable.
Well, Snow White is like maybe the only racially specific white princess because it's in the name. But if you cast Martin Luther King as a white person, that is totally unacceptable.
His comparison drew strong reactions, with many arguing that he was overlooking the difference between real historical figures and fictional characters. But why did Ben feel so strongly about this? Keep watching to find out. Shapiro's criticism about changing the story. Ben's main issue wasn't with Zegler's portrayal of Snow White itself. It was about the bigger picture. He felt that Hollywood was taking characters that had always meant something to fans and reimagining them in ways that didn't respect the original versions. Snow White, in the classic story, was kind, innocent, and saved by a prince. That innocence was a big part of why people loved the character. But in the live-action remake, Snow White is portrayed as more independent, a character who doesn't need saving from a prince, but rather takes charge of her own destiny. For Ben, this wasn't about updating the story. It was about changing something fundamental to what made the character special. And this change upset so many fans. Stay tuned as we delve more into this.
Snow White is in theaters today. This is a totally botched, woke remake by Disney, and it hits theaters today. It's woke because it all started with the lead actress, Rachel Zegler. You want to be, well-liked on the red carpet. You want people to go buy tickets. And for whatever reason, Rachel Zegler, who's starring as Snow White, she did the opposite.
The heart of Snow White. To understand why Ben was so vocal about this, we need to look at what made the original Snow White so beloved. The classic story wasn't just about a princess in distress. It was about kindness, bravery, and how good can triumph over evil. It was a tale about hope and innocence, things that resonated with children for generations.
When Snow White stumbles upon the dwarves' house in the original, what does she do? She sweeps the floors, she cleans, she cooks, and the dwarves really like this, and they all live together, and it's really nice. The change in the new movie is she just decides to take a nap And if that is not the depiction of modern feminism, I don't know what is. You don't have to contribute anything. You're perfect just the way you are. You're entitled to everything in the world. You're going to be a girl boss. She does become a girl boss in as much as when the dwarves wake her up, she just bosses them around and tells them to clean the home. And so you wonder, okay, well, why are these dwarves tolerating?
Snow White taught kids that kindness, even in the face of danger, is powerful. But in this new version, Snow White isn't the same. She's no longer just a passive character who waits for someone else to save her. She's active, taking matters into her own hands. While this could appeal to some, it felt to many like a departure from what Snow White originally represented. It didn't just seem like a fresh take, it seemed like a change that was unnecessary and stripped away what made the character so special.
Instead of wanting to offer some sort of peace offering in exchange for her residing there, she just lays down. Next morning she gets up, she doesn't cook anything for them, like in the original. She tells them, hey, how about you clean this house up? And they do. In the context of Snow White, I feel like that was a pretty important part of her character, and they just kind of took that.
Rachel Zegler's statement that sparked even more backlash. The situation about this movie got worse when Rachel Zegler spoke about the character. She didn't just explain her portrayal of Snow White, she criticized the original. Zegler said the old Snow White, who waited to be saved by a prince, was outdated and didn't reflect modern values. For many fans, this felt like a slap in the face. Snow White was always seen as more than just a princess waiting for help. She symbolizes goodness and the triumph of love. Also, she talked about how she was scared of Snow White as a child and couldn't even watch it. These comments made fans very upset as many started criticizing her. Here's the most intriguing part.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years. The cartoon was made 85 years ago, and therefore it's extremely dated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power.
Box office disaster and audience reactions. Despite the massive controversy surrounding the film, many still expected Snow White to do well at the box office. After all, Disney had a proven track record with its live-action remakes. However, the numbers quickly proved otherwise. From the very start, Snow White had trouble drawing in crowds. The online backlash, coupled with bad reviews, clearly impacted ticket sales.
We spend 1 minute on Snow White and how it totally imploded at the box office this weekend. It was so delicious. The thing they spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live action Disney remakes that they've ever had. Even the one that was their worst, Dumbo, did better than this has done.
The early projections had already predicted a rough start, but the actual opening weekend numbers were even worse than anticipated. The movie struggled both domestically and internationally. Compared to other successful Disney remakes, like The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, which grossed over $1 billion, Snow White was heading straight for a financial disaster.
Disney's live-action Snow White now holds the record for the lowest debut weekend of any live-action remake, making only $43 million.
However, critics were not kind either, with most giving the film poor reviews. Some tried to praise its attempt to modernize the story, but most felt that the changes made it worse rather than better. People criticized everything about the movie, but most significantly, the removal of key elements that made Snow White the classic it once was. On review sites, the audience score was shockingly low, with many calling it one of Disney's biggest failures in the live-action remake trend.
In this version of Snow White, the evil queen's mirror said, "Relax, you're fine. She's insufferable." Disney thought they could remove the prince, rewrite the story, and still call it Snow White.
The backlash reaches a fever pitch. Lastly, what began as simple disappointment over the remake of Snow White quickly turned into full-blown anger. For many, this wasn't just a new version of an old fairy tale. It felt like an attack on something they had loved for years. Snow White wasn't just another story. It was a part of childhood memories, a reminder of simpler days, and lessons about kindness and goodness. But now, it seemed like that beloved story was being twisted, reworked in a way that seemed disrespectful to its original charm. Fans didn't just feel let down by changes to the movie, they felt like something important was being erased. And that's when the backlash really took off.
My grandmother saw the original in the theaters, obviously, and I remember she told us that when people watched it originally in 1937 in the theaters, it was an amazing experience because for most people, it was the first color movie. And so, first of all, there was the visual of it, but second of all, people had so connected emotionally with the character of Snow White that when she eats from the apple and she dies, people were literally weeping in the theater because they liked the character of Snow White so much. It seems like it's difficult to imagine a situation in which anyone was weeping in the theater as Rachel Zegler's character goes into a coma after eating an apple.
It wasn't just about the changes in the film, it was about how those changes made people feel. The original Snow White had been special because of its innocence, simplicity, and the timeless lessons it taught about kindness and courage. When the character was altered, fans felt like they were losing something precious. Now the big question everyone is asking is if this change was really necessary, and if it's worth losing what made Snow White so special in the first place. So what do you think? Was Rachel Zegler's comment the tipping point for the movie's failure? Or do you think Snow White was doomed from the start? Let us know in the comments section. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.